Good day to you all. I'm John Davis, speaking to you from Burlington, Vermont, in the USA. I've been asked to describe the community land trust that we established here in 1984, which goes by the name of the Champlain Housing Trust. I have not always been on the other side of the world, however, when making a presentation to Australians about community land trust. I visited Sydney in 2009, participating in a few lectures and trainings about the CLT model, including a somewhat sparsely attended presentation at Parliament House. In the group shot at the upper left of your screen, you can see me peering out from the back row of one of the trainings that we did. Please note, however, another face in that same picture, Louise Crabtree. She is the one who brought me to Australia in 2009, and since then she has become an expert in the model, and quite literally she wrote the book on how community land trusts can be established in Australia. I understand she may be with you today. If so, you are lucky indeed. You are going to have dozens of questions after you listen to my galloping 15-minute overview. I'm confident that Louise can answer them all, and do so far better than I could, because she knows the laws and the politics and the programs in Australia, which of course I do not. So as I said, I've been asked to talk about the CLT here in Burlington, which I will do in a few minutes, but let me first give a quick introduction to the model as it has developed in the U.S. There are now over 250 community land trusts in the United States, including a very successful one that was organized by community activists in Puerto Rico that has developed a CLT to own land that was formerly owned by the city, on which hundreds of families had squatted and had built homes that had lived for several generations with no security of tenure. The first modern-day community land trust was established in southwest Georgia in 1969 on 6,000 acres of land. New Communities Incorporated was an outgrowth of the civil rights movement in the South, started by activist leaders of that movement from Albany, Georgia. Now, the founders of New Communities and the leaders of the CLT movement in the U.S. from which it sprang borrowed some of their best ideas from other countries, including the garden cities of England, leased land systems in Israel, and they borrowed ideas from the original plan for Canberra, as well as Gramdan villages in India. Since the founding of New Communities in 1969, the trend line for CLT formation in the U.S. has been steadily upward. Now, CLTs have become quite diverse in adapting themselves to local conditions in their cities, towns, suburbs, and rural areas. But despite that diversity, most CLTs have one thing in common, or at least they think of their mission in a common way. That is a commitment to community-led development on community-owned land of homes that remain permanently affordable. This is the thumbnail description of a CLT, the elevator speech that is derived from the model's main components of community, land, and trust. Together they form the model that is sometimes called in the United States the classic community land trust. So let's briefly look at each component, starting with community, the C in CLT. The landowner is an NGO, that is a nonprofit organization with an open membership and a balanced board of directors. The three parts of that board are elected first by the people who live on a CLT's land, and secondly by people who live in the surrounding community. And then the third part of the board are drawn from representatives from NGOs, government officials, they may be professionals like uh, bankers or lawyers that are brought onto the board to help advise the CLT in acquiring and developing land. So let's turn to the second component of the model, ownership of the real estate. The nonprofit organization I just described owns the land with the intent of never reselling it. The structural improvements on that land, that is the buildings, are owned by somebody else. A family, an individual, a cooperative housing corporation, a small business, or some other entity. A long-term ground lease protects the security of occupancy on that land for the building's owners, while also protecting the interest of the landowner, the CLT. And this arrangement is often applied to single-family owner-occupied houses, either those newly built on a CLT's land or those that were acquired by the CLT, rehabilitated, and then resold. But CLTs have also been used in the development of multi-unit housing. And it's not only about housing. CLTs have leased out their land for the development of shops and community facilities and community gardens and schools and neighborhood cinemas, and even in one instance, a gas station. So as you can see, this is a very flexible model of tenure, which lends itself to be combined with other models and mechanisms. CLTs never resell their land. They hang on to it even as it is leased out and put to productive use. They hang on to the land because the nonprofit landowner wants to determine what is built on the land, how it is used, and how low-income and moderate-income people might benefit from that land, not only in the present, but for a very long time. Community-owned land, then, is a means to ensure that development will be both equitable and sustainable, which in the world of CLTs are never separated. Equitable development and sustainable development are two sides of the same coin. Sustainable has a very specific meaning in the world of CLTs. That is, we refer to it in terms of stewardship. The nonprofit landowner doesn't own the buildings on its land, but it ensures that they remain affordable, that they remain in good repair, and that the people who occupy homes on the CLT's land have somebody standing behind them, that those homes are not lost through foreclosure should the market go bad. So bringing all these elements together is what makes a community land trust, combining an innovative approach to organization, to ownership, and to operation in a very unique way. Let's turn our attention now to a particular CLT, the Champlain Housing Trust. We're going to pause for a moment, however, to bring the second half of my presentation onto the screen. You can perhaps use this short break to frame the questions you'll be asking of my dear friend, Dr. Louise.